everyone. My name is Jalen. If you don't already know me, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the moderator for today's Tough Topic Tuesday. I am a part of the intercultural team, as well as here on campus, I'm the president of Flawless Brown, which is an artist collective for self identifying women and non binary people of color. I'm a senior marketing major and a post colonial studies minor. That's a little bit about me. Now, going into today's topic, we are doing imposter syndrome and perfectionism, which is honestly, I'm so excited we have this panel together because when I saw this topic, something that I very much relate to. So I'm really excited to see the discussion and conversation that comes out of today. Kind of going in a little bit, I kind of looked up like the differences in imposter syndrome and perfectionism. So imposter syndrome kind of reflects a belief that you're inadequate and incompetent, and usually believing yourself to be a failure despite evidence that says that you're not, or evidence that shows that you're quite skilled and successful. Whereas perfectionism kind of goes hand in hand with imposter syndrome. And perfectionists kind of set a very high standard for themselves. And, when it falls short, usually they experience self doubt or a feeling as if they're not good enough in some ways as well, even though those high standards to begin with may oftentimes not even be quite possible. Um, so yeah, without further ado, I would love to share our resource guide, which is something that everyone can take a look at. You can add resources that goes into today's Tough Topic Tuesday. Say you come across an article or a book or whatever, you can share it through there. And I just want to invite anybody who may have a question, that maybe you can type it in the chat, or comments, you can type it in the chat, or say you want something individually, you can always, and not necessarily have everybody see it, you can always type a question separately to me. That is always open to everyone. And now I would just like to invite anybody who is here who wishes to introduce themselves and maybe talk a little bit about why you're here for this specific topic today.
But I am Tamia Jordan. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm with Intercultural Student Affairs. And I just wanted to say that on this specific topic, it felt incredibly important for a number of different reasons. It was like weird things coming together at an odd angle, at a certain time earlier or end of last semester, earlier this semester, um, where a friend had posted something on Facebook about a friend who I think is incredibly confident and just really puts on this like very like strong sense of presence. I mean, he's a performer. He's gone all around the world as a performer. And he wrote this whole thing about imposter syndrome. And I was like, damn, like even he has this going on. Um, and then we had the SGA meeting where we were the Student Government Association meeting, for folks who don't know what that is, where we were talking about um, well, we weren't necessarily supposed to be talking about imposter syndrome, but when we got on that topic, we stayed there for a very long time. And I tried to impress upon folks there, and I don't want to take over your Tough Topic Tuesday. I'm not a panelist today, y'all. I'm just here. But I tried to impress upon folks there that imposter syndrome is so pervasive and at every like level of everything everywhere, and especially folks who are women identified experience it. um, and there's just this sense of an unreality, of something that's just not a reality, which is that we are not enough. But what bothers me about it is that you can have, and I read this somewhere, you can have 10 people in a room and 9 people can think they're imposters. So I'm like, it's just so wild to think about it that way, and that thinking about it in those terms has been very liberating for me. And I will talk later about my own challenges around it, but I just wanted to say hi and tell you I'm staying off camera today. I look crazy.
I think you're living your best life, Tamia, and I appreciate that. My name is Britt Lachlan. I use the she series pronouns. I'm cutting carrots, which is why I'm like, this is a weird angle. I apologize. But you know, got to get them carrots in, right? Anyway, I'm one of the residence directors in the little building, and why I'm here is one, because I just really enjoy these types of events that we have here. And just like it's a good opportunity for me to connect with people who I don't see on a daily basis in my little bubble of housing. But also I think just like what Tamia said is that like imposter syndrome is something that I experience personally and have always been dealing with. But I think that recently with the surgence of like mental health TikTok, and just like all of these TikTok creators that are talking about these things that we didn't talk about before or like didn't talk about so openly, it's incredibly empowering to see those and be like, oh wait, that's me. And so similar to what your story about SGA, like just talking with my RAs about this stuff and realizing that, you know, Emerson is a community of high achievers, and high achievers are most likely the people that are going to experience this and not even realize that they are skilled. And I think that's something that what I grapple with every single day of like thinking about, you know, what is my next step in my career? Am I even qualified for these things? Asking those questions, you know, being like, feeling like I'm just kind of faking it, and then remembering like, no, I'm skilled. So I can only imagine for myself as a white woman how that feels when I'm also talking about like my BIPOC students or, you know, my non-binary students, you know, that all that intersectionality. So long story short, I'm here to learn and here to connect.
I can speak a little bit next. My name is Jaleesa. I use the she series of pronouns, and I am the multicultural specialist through intercultural student affairs and through Emerson Counseling and Psychological Services. And I think that imposter syndrome, especially in my field, I think in the field of mental health, is extremely prevalent because kind of as Britt was alluding to, there's a new type of like mental health crisis that is currently happening. But it has been a long time coming. It has been a very long time that we've been seeing that. And as the field has gotten more diverse and more open to folks from different marginalized backgrounds kind of entering the field, I think that there also has been this fighting against norms and fighting against the way things used to be in the field. And I know that like literally an hour ago, I was like, am I a qualified clinician? Like, can I help the people who are coming in to see me? And I think it is so related to, as Tamia was saying, like these feelings of not enoughness that I think just work differently for folks who come from marginalized backgrounds, because you are getting that message from so many places at all times. And it's kind of ridiculous to think that we wouldn't internalize that in some ways. And I'm also here to support Rashida, who is my colleague, who is a panelist today. And I'm just so beyond excited to be able to see her as she, you know, takes charge in this, kind of taking the initiative to do this as one of our trainees. So I'm just so excited to be supporting her today.
I guess I can go next. I'm Lindsay. Basic information. I'm just a polycom junior. I currently serve as like SJ president. I really wanted to come today because Jalen invited me and I was really excited. I think I suffer a lot from like imposter syndrome, and when I'm in certain conversations or certain places, I feel like I'm definitely not supposed to be here, or everyone's laughing at me, or I'm not using the right words or the right terminology. And I feel like I stick out very much. And that's mortifying every time sometimes. And I think it doesn't get talked about enough, where you feel like places you're so desperately needed and you don't feel welcome. And I think that needs to be talked about a lot. So I'm just happy to be here and learn from everyone else. So thank you.
I can go next. So hi everyone. My name is Rashida. Pronouns are she, her, hers. And as Lisa mentioned, I am a trainee in the counseling department at Emerson. And so I am completing my master's of social work at Boston University. And yeah, I'm here just to kind of echo what everyone said, because I think this is really probably the prevalent thing in my life that has been difficult. I think imposter syndrome has affected, career for me. It has been hard to at sometimes battle that voice in my own head, and as we've all kind of talked about, that says you're not enough. And I think just in general, I think I realize more and more just how much it impacts every one of us in different scenarios, whether they're larger things like our careers and our lives, or more personal things like maybe even in a friendship, there's imposter syndrome that comes in that says, wait, am I supporting my friend in this right way? And so I'm very passionate too about talking about this topic. So I'm just happy to be here and to be in a supportive space where we can kind of talk about this.
Hi, I'm Jaehan. I use the she, they pronouns, either or is fine. I am a sophomore journalism major with minors in psychology and sociology. On campus, I do a handful of things, starting with I'm a resident in Boylston Place, resident assistant in Boylston Place. I am the VP to Lindsay in student government and the VP of Emerson International. And I am the multicultural liaison to Zeta Phi Eta, which is a professional fraternity for communication arts and sciences. And I am a panelist today. And I think the fact that I am in so many positions on campus has partly to do with like that need to keep proving myself to know that I am capable. Because I was brought up that way, that we will delve in later. That's me.
I'll introduce myself. I am not part of the Emerson community. My name's Nihad. I am actually a friend of Tamia's. We've known each other since first grade. And she is kind of my sounding board. And one day I was having a moment and she's like, you need this. She sent me the link to join you guys today. And I'm so happy to be here and be able to listen to this.
I'll go real quick. Hi, I'm Jamaica. I go by the He They series. I'm part of Team Intercultural. And honestly, I'm here because of the dope lineup of our panelists. I was like, oh, y'all, who we trying to get? And then once the confirmations came through, I'm like, I'm coming. And so that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm hyped, obviously sharing space with everybody. And I ain't gonna lie, like our invitation list, you're the people that I want to be around. And you're the people that I want to have these hard conversations with. Because honestly, I wouldn't have them with anybody else. So thank you.
I can go as I put my sandwich down. Hi, everyone. Jason Meyer, he, him, his. And I think I'm really here for two reasons. Number one, to support Jahan and Lindsay as I work very closely with them in student government. And I try so hard to be aware of where everyone's coming from and understanding the role that perfectionism and professionalism and all of that has on everyone. And I also think about deepening my own commitment to dismantling white supremacy. And many of you have been on the receiving end of that article from Showing Up for Racial Justice about what are the tools of white supremacy in the workplace. And on that list is perfectionism and how it does create barriers to people from feeling that they have a place at the table, from being able to share their voice. And this disproportionately impacts women of color. And so continuing to do my own work to identifying that and pushing forward an environment that doesn't honor those kind of supremacist ideas and beliefs.
I can go real quick. Hi, everybody. My name is Acacia Santos. I use the she series pronouns. I'm a residence director in Little Building. And I came to today's topic because I read it on my calendar and I was like, oop, okay, this is an important conversation to have today. Because I was just thinking about imposter syndrome. And mine comes with layers. It's a multi-tiered system. It's intersectional. There's a lot to it. And so I always love being a part of these conversations because one, it helps me understand that it's like what Jason was saying, like that white supremacy idea of perfectionism. I'm not the only one who is struggling under that ideal. And that if anything, if we come together in these spaces, we can work to deconstruct so we can reconstruct, to provide more accessible spaces for everybody. So, thank you.
I can quickly introduce myself. I'm going to keep my camera off today, but hi everyone, my name is Jacqueline Galvin. I use the she series of pronouns. I am a first semester senior public relations major who wants to go into the sports industry. And as a woman, I feel a lot of imposter syndrome in that area. And I'm very glad that Jay sent me the link to this today, because I want to be here to support them, but also this is definitely a conversation that I need to have. So yeah, thank you all for putting this together. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jay. I work in the Social Justice Center. I was invited by Jam, and I thought that this was a perfect opportunity to connect and engage with other Emerson folks outside of my SJC team. I agree with everything that has been said before. I do believe that imposter syndrome has a lot of different layers and a lot of different dimensions. And depending on what body you're in, it means something different for you. So I'm interested to see how that unfolds in this conversation. And I'm hopeful that I'll learn more about, how it manifests in other spaces outside of myself. Because for me, I haven't had many conversations around imposter syndrome or perfection or being a perfectionist. And I think that's why this conversation is being had right now, because we don't talk about it. Because if we do, then that presents some vulnerability that I think many of us don't want to be exposed in that way until you get into a space where others can empathize with those sentiments. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Hey everyone, my name is Matthew Carney. Pronouns I use are he, him, his, and I am a residence director as well at Emerson College. Reason I'm here, I just thought the topic was really important and really kind of poignant, where we are kind of, and what everything is going on. So I'm just really intrigued to listen, take it in, understand, and then kind of share it out, and then also kind of being here to support to those presenting.
Awesome. Amazing. Wow. Thank you everyone for sharing and for introducing themselves. Now I'm going to turn it to our purple table and start our panel for today. So basically our first question is, name a time you recently have experienced imposter syndrome. If you feel comfortable.
I can start. I was just thinking, because I've been in trying to overcome imposter syndrome, as soon as I recognize it, I want to be able to just move past it. But I think I had that moment last night for one of my fraternity's recruitment events that I facilitated. We were talking about decolonizing professionalism, and because of also my position in the fraternity, I just felt like it is my place to speak on this, but also it's for everyone, but also it is I am expected to speak more on it and share my insight and experiences, which I did. And I want to say that I did well, but I wavered a lot during the event and afterwards, wondering whether or not I said the right thing or I said something that was at least helpful, because trying to also unpack that there is no singular correct answer. And I guess it's really exhausting first having that feeling of insecurity of I'm not good enough, but I'm trying, and then actively in that moment trying to like pull myself back from that feeling. So just this back and forth. And that was just last night.
I can go. So I definitely echo that like sort of cycle that you get into of like not feeling good enough. And so I was helping out with a workshop actually this yesterday, and I was experiencing a lot of imposter syndrome prior to it. It felt like it was just like this battle with myself where I was like, wait, what if you mess up? Sort of thinking about doing things wrong or thinking about maybe not being helpful in my position as helping to lead this workshop. And so I definitely went through that same cycle of feeling like I'm not good enough and beating myself up. And so even right now in my current role, I see it pop up for myself.
I can go. The last time that was imposter syndrome, I guess, was like in my face a little bit was last year when I was the Board of Trustees student rep, and I don't know, it was just, I immediately looked around and saw almost no one who looked like me. And I was like, okay, I'm in the wrong spot right now. This is definitely not where I'm supposed to be. The entire time I was just thinking about like how someone like me, like where I'm from, like the place I grew up, people like that don't really belong. I wouldn't say don't belong, but aren't usually in these types of rooms with prominent or like important people. So for me, I felt very out of place. I felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. Someone else was supposed to be there. It was kind of awkward for me because I felt like everyone was looking at me like, who is this? Why is she here? You know, and trying to kind of swallow that while doing my best to represent like the school, but having like this overwhelming feeling like, oh no, oh no, oh no, they know I'm not supposed to be here. And yeah, it sucks like overall, and I'm working on it, but you know.
Okay. And I just want to add, like, for everyone a part of this panel today, there is immense vulnerability that I think goes into sharing. So if there's ever like a question, like you don't have to answer every question by any means, just answer for what calls to you, I guess, and what you're comfortable with sharing with. So our next question is, what does imposter syndrome and perfectionism mean to you? And do they show up simultaneously in your life, or do they have a relationship with one another? Um, and I guess how that pertains to you personally.
Well, I can answer. I can answer the first question, and then I can also go a little bit into the second question. And I want to share something with you all because I think it's relevant because I'm also an Emerson student, Emerson alum, undergrad and grad, and I think it speaks to the moment. So I'm in a doctoral program now, and part of my dissertation research is really a storytelling aspect because as an Emerson alum, you know, a lot of us tell stories. And so I took a different approach to my dissertation in creating an open letter. And my open letter, the pseudo name is Storytelling University, but it's actually Emerson. And I'll share the first paragraph of a part of my introduction to my dissertation. And I think it answers the question of a moment where I felt imposter syndrome, not the last moment for sure, but definitely a moment. So I'll share it with you quickly. I wrote, so the title of my dissertation is America's Empathy Deficit, Our Bloody Heirloom and the Invisible Backpack. And so it says, Dear Storytelling University, we met in the fall of 2006 in the so-called Majestic Theater during the new student orientation. Looking up at the welcome home banner in the foyer, I immediately wondered, who's home? As the assembly began, I panned the room as I do in most large crowds to notice the student to the left of me and the student to the right looked familiar, as well as the row in front and the row behind. They looked familiar not because I had known them, but because I was in a space where my Black body was one of few in a sea of white bodies. And like in most moments of my education career, I felt alone in a room full of people. Let me see. My invitation to your home did not make room for nuance, or more importantly, the expression of my Black culture. So I'm confident that you did not know this, but I grew up in a house where many would consider my parents old school. They came from an era where children were to be seen and not heard, a generation where streetlights were used more than just to see at night, but as an indication that it was time to go home before mom had to come look for you. As a child, my independence went as far as I could hear the music playing from the record player that my dad had blasting in a living room, spilling into the streets of our neighborhood. And then I go on to talk about my experiences from student orientation all the way up until I graduated. And so I share that with you as a sort of an entry point for what it's like to feel imposter syndrome without actually saying a word, or without actually a word being spoken directly to you. And I think that's a dimension of imposter syndrome that I think is not spoken about often, because usually when people talk about imposter syndrome, it usually comes from a conversation where they feel inadequate, right? That they're asked a question where they may not have the answer, or they're not included in a conversation at all, which means that they don't feel belonging. And so in this space of where you're supposed to be oriented to a new space, and you just being in that space, you don't even feel like you belong without anybody saying anything to you, I think was a challenge for me coming to Emerson. I was a transfer student, and I went to an HBCU, and I transferred to Emerson to study film. And to answer the second question of perfectionism and imposter syndrome, I think for me it was it's typically felt from this core desire to be understood. And I'm a big proponent of words. And the only reason why, not the only reason, but much of the reason why I even went to Emerson to study film is because I didn't have the words to describe what I was seeing with story and with film and with angles and with character development and all that. So I felt inadequate when I wanted to make a movie, but I didn't have the words to say, this is what a set is, this is the language, this is the lingo, right? And so a lot of it came instinctually, and you use slang or you use words that make sense in your head, but when you're speaking to those who have been studying it or have exposure to it or know the language, even though you might get the same product, the process to get there seems to be challenging, or you're discredited because you haven't said the right word. And I think that has manifested itself in a lot of different settings, professionally, personally. I think I went back and got my graduate degree in marketing from Emerson, not because I didn't know marketing, not because I didn't understand it, it's because I was in spaces on campus where I would say this doesn't look good, but not actually have the words to tell you why it didn't look good. I just had the gut instinct of like, nah, this branding is wrong. But I didn't even know the word branding was something that people would understand. And so those are the many instances in which I feel it. And so wanting to say the right word is the perfectionist dimension. Feeling like you're an imposter because you don't have the right words is that's the imposter syndrome. So I think for me, it's hand in hand, but the core of it is really just wanting to be understood. I think that's the overarching theme for a lot of us and a lot of my peers who feel the imposter syndrome. It's really just it boils down to feeling like they're misunderstood, and I think words and language play a large role in that.
Thank you for sharing all of that. That hit especially close to home with what I was feeling exactly last night and just how my Emerson experience has been. But kind of to answer the question first, as a means to preface how I was connecting to that point, I think my mom intentionally wanted to instill in me like perfectionism, but we called it by a different like term in a different language, Gyasu, competitiveness, but extremely. So she put me in a Chinese school when, even though I have Chinese heritage, I was not brought up in that environment because back home, Chinese folks are seen as like highly competitive. And in that school, it was right because in my grade, there was 700 students. And when I was first enrolled in that school, because I got good grades in preschool, I was sorted into one of the top classes. But then because of my ethnicity slash religion, I was lumped in with the other Muslim kids in the lower classes because they didn't think I could pick up Mandarin the same way the other kids in those golden classes do. And the whole fact that they called it golden classes at all is kind of messed up. And I had to work obviously multiple times as hard as my peers to get into better classes because the way the education system is set up is that if you are in the golden classes, you get better access to resources, better teachers, all of that. And when I was in, I'm trying to convert it into American education system, but like around 5th grade, 6th grade, I was in a good class and I almost rode a bus to and from home and there was almost bullies. And when the bullies found out like I was in a good class, they left me alone. Like that is some kind of status. And so that entire like primary school education experience has instilled in me perfectionism first because I've always had to work hard and really hard. And then when I entered secondary school, I was in a normal public school where I was now part of the, I guess, ethnic majority. And I got very easily into the top classes. But then I overheard a teacher saying to a parent who was complaining that their child, who was of an ethnic minority, not getting into a good class despite having like really good grades. The teacher explained like it's grades, but it's also like we look for racial quota and we're like trying to even out diversity and all that. And that made me feel really bad because my grades were not nearly as good as my peers in my class. And for the longest time, I almost felt like I was stealing somebody else's place. Like I didn't belong here. And I was okay with not being in that class because the environment was very toxic and nobody really liked socializing. They all were just like studying. But I would say that I'm not supposed to be here genuinely because somebody else is working so much harder than me in terms of academics because I was focusing on my co-curriculars. But they would almost like kind of just dismiss my concerns and see it as like insecurity, which partly it was, but it's also like me recognizing my privilege, but I don't get to say that. And another thing with privilege was that I was one of the few students who spoke, I guess, proper English, American even, with like a non-local accent because that's just how I was raised. So I very easily got opportunities to like represent the school for public speaking, for debate and all that, even though I wasn't very good. Like I'm very grateful for the opportunity to represent because I received training and that made me better at it. But there were people who were much better than I was. And in my senior year, because I was handling too many other co-curriculars, a friend of mine had substituted me for one of those representing things. And she got so much further than I ever could. And I'm so proud of her, but that made me feel really bad because I genuinely was stealing somebody's place. So that's, I guess, how the imposter syndrome is instilled in me. And then now coming to Emerson, knowing that it is an institution based on meritocracy and knowing that my credentials may be because of my privilege and not because of my potential, I feel like sometimes I don't deserve to be here. Sometimes I'm not as good as I seem, even if my history says otherwise, even if my resume says otherwise. So I'm constantly trying to make up for it, constantly trying to, I guess, reconcile with that cognitive dissonance. Like, I know I'm not good enough, so what am I so what am I going to do about it? I'm going to keep working hard at it. And that's why I just like spread myself thin, do literally everything I am able to. And last semester, I would constantly beat myself up if I didn't know for sure I was doing a hell of a good job. This semester, I'm doing better about it and keeping to what I can do, and just doing my best in the moment. But it's still something that kind of haunts me at night when I can't immediately fall asleep and I'm having to like reflect on how my day went and what I did. Um, and a lot of the things I do on campus has to do with communicating, and I'm almost blaming it on me being multilingual and all that, which is, I guess, partly true, but I really struggle to put my thoughts, feelings into words that make sense to others. But I know I am making sense. I think we all need to work to at least meet each other halfway because we all communicate differently. But it's really hard to not beat myself up over that because for 2 decades, that's all I've ever known.
I would say, I mean, a lot of what's said, it definitely resonates with me. I would say for me, imposter syndrome is sort of this feeling of not being good enough, and perfectionism for a lot of the times is my response to imposter syndrome. It's like, if I can be quote unquote perfect, then I'm proving this imposter syndrome like wrong. And for an example, I actually am changing careers. So I am getting a master's of social work. As I said, I'm a trainee here. And when I think about that, I realize that the reason that I never even pursued, social work or a career working with people or in counseling was imposter syndrome. Like there was a voice saying, wait, you know what I mean? You're not good enough. And then also to tie it to like family, there were certain expectations and sort of thoughts around what my career should have been. And so I realized that that's that imposter syndrome that showed up. And even now, as I'm sort of in a master's social work program and I am already in the process of changing, I still deal with that imposter syndrome that says, wait, you're not good enough. And again, I feel like the perfectionism shows up as a response that if I could feel like I'm doing a great job, if I feel like I'm doing everything right, then maybe I am. So that's the really difficult thing, I think, too, about like juggling these two things is like recognizing those two different sources. And for me, like I said, my perfectionism a lot of the times is in response to imposter syndrome. So it's hard to navigate. And I agree that like kind of wrestling it with yourself and meeting people halfway and being open about it is sort of the best way to go about it at times.
I also wonder, and the group could sort of chime in on this, because I struggle with trying to separate imposter syndrome versus just being different. Because I think that imposter syndrome in some ways presupposes that you got to be like whoever else is in the room. And it's less about the competence and your expertise in a given thing versus what everybody else in a particular space is doing or saying. And I think that's where I struggle is like, am I just different, or am I feeling imposter syndrome, or am I feeling this idea that I'm different? And it's almost like that idea of like being a prisoner of your own fame, right? Like you can't do certain things because you have this certain life, or you can't walk into these certain spaces because you talk like this, even though you're just as smart as the person next to you. But they're saying the same thing, they're just saying it in a different way. So I'm wondering if that is the definition of imposter syndrome. Does that come up where you struggle with trying to figure out or decipher when's the cutoff between competence versus difference?
Yeah, that really resonates with me because I think that like when I think about both of those things, that imposter syndrome of not being confident enough versus like just being different, I think that in a certain way, certain facets of, I'll just speak for US culture, see those as the same, that like there is a conformity that is expected. And so being different, therefore, is also not being competent. That like part of what proves your competence is your ability to conform to certain norms. And by certain norms, I mean typically like white, male, straight, norms. And I think that then it becomes really difficult, as you said, Jay, to distinguish like, what is this? Am I competent? Am I meeting the metrics of what is success, either for me or for my field or for this, that, and the other? And I'm just doing it in a different way. Or am I incompetent? And I think that like there's a lot of gatekeeping in a lot of these spaces about, if you're not going to do things the way that other people are doing them, how can you be competent? It has to be about everybody doing things in the same way. And the only way of you being better is to just go that one path farther, harder, whatever adjective you want to use. And so I love that you're bringing that up, that in a lot of times it does just feel like I am different, and therefore I'm feeling incompetent. But can we like blow that up a little bit? Like, do those two things have to be the same?
And that comparison, I think, spills into the perfection, right? Is it's like, is it a perfect square because I'm looking at another square? So it's not perfect because the size of my square is different than the size of your square. You see what I'm saying? So it's just like that whole idea of playing on words of like what's perfect and what's different and what's assimilating. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
I just want to open this kind of conversation up to continue to answer Jay's question, to anyone who might have some insights to answer. Um, I like the conversational kind of aspect to this, and yeah, it's kind of interesting because Jay, I what I initially kind of started thinking when you said that is like, I feel like from the moment we're born, we are weighed down by these expectations that are placed upon us from a multitude of contexts and places that these kind of things come from. And I feel like they become attached to us in some ways, and we have to believe that we have to, like, I don't know, fight back it in a sort of way. And I feel like also the idea of walking into a space and not feeling seen as you are and not being understood as you are or loved as you are is like, I don't know, a big driver in that as well. I feel like, kind of going back to what like Jay's, I mean, everyone's kind of been saying it, like going into a place and having to say the right thing, and then afterwards being like, oh my gosh, was that right? Was that wrong? Did people understand me? Like, is that even what I wanted to say, or was I being weighed down by these kind of like anxious perfectionist kind of thoughts? Um, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to underscore what Jalen just said. Like, it's like you just snatched the thought out of my brain. Like, the word indoctrination just keeps coming up for me over and over and over again, because it really is from inception. And I'm thinking about that a lot now because, there's a brand new baby in my life, and folks don't necessarily mean harm when they say certain things, when they comment in certain ways. But even with babies, we say things, that ultimately, as those things start to land as we grow, um, end up internalized and in our soul. So it truly is this indoctrination. And I find myself maybe sounding a little Pollyanna-ish, and I don't mean to, because trust me, I know that there's some, not everything is grand sunshine and I don't know, moonbeams, but um, just really trying to promote positivity and like to just pour like love and life and joy into whoever I'm with, but especially to like little people and the babies. And when I hear things, and I have to hear myself as well. I have to hear my own language, because I just like white supremacy culture. I too am indoctrinated. Just because I'm black doesn't mean I can't perpetuate white supremacy. Just doesn't mean that I don't perpetuate white supremacy, meaning that I absolutely do. and it's sort of the same thing of like reprogramming, if you will, and it's a lot, and it starts with conversations like this, you know, because you know we have therapists here, and actually I started going to therapy in a very real way, like in a very like committed way, because when I was promoted to director of student activities at Berkeley, after like I was there for a year and a half, and they wanted to promote me, and I said no, and I said I'll be the associate director, but I don't want to be the director. So I became the associate director for like 4 months, and then my boss was like, "This is silly. You should just be the director." And I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll be the director." And like, but it gave me so much anxiety. Like I literally needed to find a therapist to help me work through all of that. And it it's so interesting because this therapist is actually back in my life again, after having left the area. She's now, thank God, not thank God, but now due to COVID and like being able to do things virtually and her keeping her license here. In the past like month, we've started talking again, which is really funny, because now she's like, remember the things we used to talk about and blah 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 blah, and now you know you're talking about XYZ. Now I'm talking about different things now, and there's still imposter syndrome coming up. It's just different imposter syndrome, you know, because we spent 4 years working through those things, and it took at least 4 years, at least I don't know how many books. I'm not at home right now. Otherwise, I would show y'all my bookshelf. Well, actually, no, we brought those books to storage. But anyway, the books that are about. I'll put some of the titles in our doc, and folks should definitely take a look at our doc. And it's not just resources from today; it's resources from our previous Tough Topic Tuesdays as well. But I have books. I did CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm saying all this now because I think that it's just so funny, because I think people look at me now and they're like, oh, like you got this. You do all these things in A B C D E F G, and I still struggle when I walk into a space of feeling like, like, is this my space? Do I belong here? Um, I could literally be the person in charge, and I'm like, is this my space? Do I belong here? And it's like cyclical, because it kind of ebbs and flows and comes and goes. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I got this, and sometimes I'm like, oh, hell no, I gotta hide for like 3 months. And I guess I want to start to talk about. I love the conversation that we've been having, because speaking it and naming it and identifying it, and then beginning to kind of challenge those thoughts that we're having when we have them, is all part of the process. And again, I think our therapist here can speak on that better than I can. But I also want to talk about like solutions, and not that there's anything that will fix it specifically, but I think that there are like tools and interventions that I think can certainly help. And so I'd love to hear from anybody about that, because I know we don't have a ton of more time left.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna hop on the back end of like, I love, number one, thank you for everybody like literally letting me see part of your world and part of you more. I always explain that like love is when I get to know you more, and you know that I already love you. So anytime I get to know you more, that's expanding like, the love. And I just want to shower you in that. Um, I think about when it comes to imposter syndrome and perfectionism, like the way that we don't offer ourselves enough grace, and we don't offer ourselves enough recognition. Like, bitch, you did that. Like, do you know how far you come? Do you know what you've already done? Do you know all the things that you've put into place that would not have been in place had it not been for you? And that's a testament on its own, because I know a lot of y'all personally, and I see you every day doing your thing. And my God, do you just like awe me in so many ways. And so I wonder what it would be like if you could shower yourself in that same kind of love and that same kind of admiration and that same kind of awe. And I don't mean to get emotional, but it's because like I care for you in the way that I do. And I see the magic that you are, and that's all I want too, for you to see that. Um, I will say for myself personally, I come from a place where my family loved me. They loved me because when I was born, they knew that a world was not going to love me. I'm an intersex trans BIPOC human. My mom growing up is Black and Asian, but I only got to know my Asian roots because my mom was taught at a very young age to whiten her skin. And so my mom, thankfully, knew that she had to love me harder because she already knew what the world had done to her and hers. And so, as far as imposter syndrome and perfectionism, I will say that I thankfully haven't experienced it too much because my mom told me that, baby, you got to fight because there's nobody like you on this world. God made you the way that you are, and you've got something to represent everything. And I will tell you, the funniest thing is the only time I've experienced imposter syndrome for myself is coming to Emerson when I applied for the assistant director position. I was like, oh my God, this is lofty. Like, I'm a school teacher. Like, are they gonna hire me? Like, that's just working with college students. Oh my God. Like, I work with high schoolers and middle schoolers. I don't know about this. And then I got a call back and I was like, oh, I just kind of wanted to be like, excuse me, Ms. Jordan, are you sure that you have the right, did you mean to call me back? But when everything aligns and when you step into who you are and you recognize, actually, I'm perfect for this. And I'm thankful that I have people who also recognize I'm perfect for this. And so I kind of want to think about the concept of sharing yourself with grace, but also surrounding yourself with people who you know also validate your existence and the love of who you are. So I had to say that. Like, I would be remiss if I didn't say that. So thanks.
I just want to say, you know, I can relate so much to so many things that were said in different ways. I feel like I have imposter syndrome almost daily in various aspects of my life. I'm in a different world from you guys. I'm not in the educational world. I work in advertising. I don't look like a lot of the people that I work with. I am a parent, and relating to what Tamia said about what we do with children. And I do think that, we are works in progress, and just be kind to yourselves. And I strive to be kinder to myself every day. And I hope that listening to you guys and doing this, you're all much younger than me. It gives me hope that I can recognize this now and not pass this feeling on to my children. I love what Jamaica said about his parents. So I just, thank you so much for allowing me to kind of spy on your community today. I appreciate it so much.
It's not spying. You're here now, so you're in it.
Yeah, I can completely empathize with what you were saying, and I have two children as well. I have a high schooler; she'll be 16 soon, and a soon to be 8-year-old, and they look very different. I mean, my son, if anybody follows me on Facebook, you can see him from a mile away. Big curly fro and full of energy, and when I know that they're going to enter spaces where they're the only one of few, I always try to explain to them that these spaces need you. It's just like, I tell my son, I use the analogy like, you like different music. You don't like just one song, right? You want other songs. What if I made your favorite food with just one ingredient? It'd be nasty, right? Like, yeah, I was like, so embrace difference, embrace different flavors, and embrace different languages and different people, because that's what makes things better. Everything's always better when there's more than one type of a thing. And I've always tried to instill that in my own children, to feel for them to feel like a space needs their presence, particularly in spaces where they don't see any of themselves in anyone else. And so that's what I would embrace. And when you walk into a space where no one looks like you, to say to yourself that this space needs you. It needs me. It needs me.
Well, hearing that, I just also want to say that I just appreciate having this space, and I agree with what's said, and just having the validation and finding support systems around us, including having a space like this, is really important as we battle imposter syndrome and perfectionism. And so I also wanted to mention that the counseling department has a support group that we're trying to start for students of color. We talked a lot about being different too, and how that's a part of imposter syndrome. And so we're creating a supportive space in order to talk about certain issues for students of color. So if that's of interest, definitely let us know, because I think we need to continue to rely on supportive spaces where we can be seen as we are. So thank you all.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, everyone, so much for being so vulnerable and sharing so much today. I feel like from the moment our check in began, I was honestly already feeling emotional just from listening and hearing and truly feeling everything that people were sharing. So thank you so much for that. I feel like the energy in this room is so intense and so strong. And literally, since we all came into this, and I feel like that's so rare over Zoom, but literally, since we all joined this Zoom, there's just something so strong and lovely about this space. So thank you so much for everyone coming today. I don't want to close. I think Jam messaged me and was basically like, I think we need a part two. And I think we do, because this conversation is incredible and I just want to keep exploring it. I don't want this to end at all. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to our panel specifically for sharing so much. And thank you, Rashida, for bringing this topic to us and also helping form these questions. This is something that I feel like weighs on people's minds a lot, but is very rarely talked about. And I feel like also in just naming and processing and just bringing words to these feelings helps, at least for me, process some of my own things that I deal with. So thank you so much for all of that. Jaleesa just put the live Google Doc of our resources back into the chat. Oh wait, maybe that's the one that's for, oh yeah, Strength Through Unity.
The sign up sheet, and then just above that, Tamia put the resource doc, and the link is in the resource doc as well.
Awesome. I am definitely going to share that with Flawless members. I feel like that's so powerful and awesome. Yay. And yeah, the resource doc is up above from Mia. Next week, we have another Tough Topic Tuesday diving into Afro Latina identity, which will be awesome. We have a great panel together, bringing some alumni back that I know I love so much, and having a couple students, well, one student as well. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, again, for sharing this space. I'm feeling so full right now. I'm feeling seriously just like intense energy from everyone. So thank you. I just feel great. Thank you all for sharing this space, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your Tuesday. And I hope to see you all soon.